Good to have everybody this morning. This morning we're going to start the study of the book of Leviticus. How many of you have read the book of Leviticus? How many of you enjoyed reading the book of Leviticus? Oh, okay. At least you're honest. Exodus, as they're building the tabernacle, is tedious reading. Leviticus, for the most part, is tedious reading. You have to work at it because it's not something that just really says, man, I really enjoyed reading that book. What you need to do is take the time to read Leviticus. After you read Leviticus, read the book of Hebrews, because the book of Hebrews basically explains how we deal with the book of Leviticus as Christians. As you look at the book of Leviticus, everybody should have an outline that wants one. Did anybody want an outline that did not get one? Okay. When you look at the book of Leviticus, you have Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Now these 5 books are called the 5 books of Moses. Moses wrote the first 5 books of the Old Testament. He also wrote one of the Psalms. You know, you always think, well, David wrote all the Psalms, but Moses wrote one of the Psalms. Genesis shows man sins. Exodus shows man is redeemed. Redeemed means that his purchase price has been paid and he's been released from slavery. Leviticus is, since God has done this for man, redeemed man worships. You know, everybody ought to realize that God is God. God is not a man. God is not a physical person. God is a spirit. That's why God can be everywhere. He can know everything. And you can't hide anything from Him. To me, that used to be so scary. He knows what I'm thinking. You know, just like Santa Claus. He knows if you've been good or bad. Well, that's the way God is. And if you are unfaithful, it scares you to death. But when you're faithful, it's comforting. Because He knows me better than my wife does. So Leviticus, the name itself means relating to the Levites. Leviticus, Levites. How can an unholy man approach a sinless God? How can a sinful man approach a holy God? Now, when you're thinking of Leviticus, and you think of the word holy, think of the word saint. Sanctified means made holy. Saint is one of the words that is used to describe a Christian. For those of us that have obeyed the gospel, we are saints. Now, how does it make you feel when somebody calls you Saint Elaine, Saint Stewart, Saint Brian, Saint Beth, Sounds more formal if I say Saint Elizabeth, right? Saint Patty. You know, you think of being a saint, and you read Leviticus, all through the book of Leviticus, they knew they weren't saints. But folks, when you read the New Testament, we are saints. We have it much, and I could go on and on and on, with much better than they did in the Old Testament. As you look at Leviticus, the key thought of Leviticus is holiness. In Leviticus, spiritual holiness is symbolized by physical perfection. How many of us are perfect? Hold up your hand if you are perfect. How many of us are perfect physically? Hold up your hand. Nobody? You see what happens when you know that you have to be physically perfect to come before God? We're not. So you think about it. Leviticus, one commentator said, is a picture book for the Israelites as to what Jesus is going to be like and what Jesus is going to do for them. Everything you see in Leviticus is like a puzzle. It's like a riddle. It said when the Messiah comes, this is just a shadow of what He is really like. And so we see Jesus. Okay, now is everybody in Leviticus? I'm not going to read a whole bunch. But I'm going to read what He's going to do with this burnt offering. Now the Lord, Leviticus chapter 1, verse 1. Now I will say, this is given to them while they are at Mount Sinai. They have built the tabernacle. Now Leviticus is going to tell them how to use that tabernacle in their worship. Now the Lord called to Moses and spoke to him from the tabernacle of meeting. That is not the tabernacle of worship. That is the tabernacle, the tent, that was set up outside the camp. Moses would go to the tabernacle of meeting. God would meet with him and speak with him at the tent of meeting. Joshua was there all the time to guard it and to make sure that Moses is the only one that's getting in there. So God talks to Moses from the tabernacle of meeting, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when any one of you brings an offering to the Lord, you shall bring your offering of the livestock, of the herd, and of the flock. If his offering is a burnt sacrifice of the herd, let him offer a male without blemish. He shall offer it of his own free will at the door of the tabernacle of meeting before the Lord. Then he shall put his hand on the head of the burnt offering, and it will be accepted on his behalf to make atonement for him." Okay, now here's a good way to remember what that word means. Atonement means at one with God. At one with God. He shall kill the bull before the Lord. So here is if I understand correctly, here is the worshiper coming. He slits that bull's throat. And the priest Aaron's son shall bring the blood, sprinkle the blood all around on the altar that is by the door of the tabernacle of meeting. And he shall skin the burnt offering and cut it into pieces. Now that's the priest that is doing that. The sons of Aaron the priest shall put fire on the altar, lay the wood in order on the fire. Then the priest, Aaron's son, shall lay the parts, the head, and the fat in order on the wood that is on the fire upon the altar. But he shall wash its entrails, its guts, and its legs with water. And the priest shall burn all on the altar as a burnt sacrifice, an offering made by fire, a sweet aroma to the Lord. Now, who is this going to smell sweet to? A sweet aroma to the Lord. Here's one thing wrong with the United States today. I can't speak for any other country, but folks, I can speak for the United States of America. Too many people in the United States of America have begun to think of worship as something for me. You know, why do you go to church? Well, I like the singing. Well, I like the people that are there. I like the preacher. It is so exciting. The whole deal of worship is, it is a sweet aroma to the Lord. Worship is not for us. Now, we get stuff out of it. When we come together, we are edified, we are encouraged. But when we come to worship, it is for God. These other things, like Deborah says, she said, there are things that we do that we get the fringe benefits of it. You know, we get indirect blessings when we do what God tells us to do. So why do we come to worship? So we can offer God the worship that He deserves. Now just think about God. He is the one and only true God. You know, I don't know how many people I've heard say, well, Jerry, we all worship the same God. Folks, if you'll read what the Bible says about God, and then you'll read what their books say about their God, they're different. They're different. Now this says He is the one and only true God. Not only is He the one and only true God, He is the giver of every good and perfect gift. Not only is He the giver of every good and perfect gift, He is the King of kings and the Lord of lords. How many of us are kind of wondering what's going to happen to the United States within the next 100 years? I wonder what's going to happen to the United States in the next 100 years. In my last 50 years, the morality, the ungodliness of the United States of America has increased greatly. And you look at the United States of America, God is greater than the United States of America. Remember in Genesis, Abraham is told, you're not going to come to the promised land right now, because the iniquity of the Amorite is not yet full. How much more wicked do we have to get before God brings judgment upon us? So we think of that. That is the God that we worship. And yet, that is the God that we